Alex just pulled off something nobody in professional tennis saw coming. She walked onto the grass courts of Berlin's Steffi Graf Stadium as a wild card, looked world number 2 Elena Rybakina straight in the eye, and defeated her in 2 clean sets, 7-5, 6-4. No tiebreaks, no dramatic 3-set survival story, just a composed, decisive dismantling of the reigning Australian Open champion, played on that very champion's birthday. Now riding an adrenaline wave that has an entire nation glued to their screens well past midnight, Alex must pause, collect herself, and face a sobering truth. Her reward is a quarterfinal showdown with Aryna Sabalenka, a player who, just 6 weeks ago in Rome, took down the world numbers 2, 3, and 4 in back-to-back matches to claim one of the sport's most prestigious titles. But before we look ahead, let's examine what actually unfolded against Rybakina, because the details tell an important story. Alex fell behind early, dropping a break in the opening set. Rybakina was serving at full power, firing aces and hammering first serves with authority. At 4-1, it looked like a short evening. Filipino fans watching at 1 a.m. were already reaching for the remote. Then the match shifted. Rybakina's forehand, already unreliable since the clay season, began leaking errors at an alarming rate. By the final point, she had accumulated 41 unforced errors. For a player of her caliber, that number is extraordinary. To her enormous credit, Alex recognized the turning point the moment it arrived and stayed exactly where she needed to be. She moved inside the baseline whenever rallies allowed, remained patient on return, and served with a pace that would have been almost unrecognizable 6 months ago. Multiple commentators noted serves landing in the mid-160 km/h range, a significant jump from last season, when Alex routinely served below 145 km/h on grass, a surface where a modest delivery can usually stay hidden behind the low bounce and quick conditions. That added velocity is the difference between holding serve comfortably and fighting for every single game. That said, important context surrounds the win. Rybakina arrived in Berlin carrying a 7-5 record since Stuttgart. Her forehand has looked inconsistent, and her movement between points has often reflected the weariness of someone who has been on court too long without adequate rest. By any fair assessment, she was not at her best. But that reality takes nothing away from Alex. If anything, it highlights the maturity she showed in recognizing a window of opportunity and refusing to let it close. You still have to hit the ball over the net and inside the lines against one of the biggest servers in women's tennis, and Alex did exactly that. The challenge is that this context makes the quarterfinal look even more daunting because Elena Svitolina is anything but a diminished opponent. In fact, Svitolina may be playing the best tennis of her career. The numbers make the case. She opened 2026 by winning Auckland without dropping a single set, followed by quarterfinal runs at the Australian Open and Indian Wells. Then came the clay season, where she delivered one of the most impressive stretches anyone has produced this year. In Rome, she defeated Rybakina in the quarterfinals, Iga Swiatek in the semifinals, and Coco Gauff in the final, claiming her first WTA 1000 title since 2018 and the third Rome crown of her career. The final against Gauff went the distance at 6-4, 6-7, 6-2, but what stood out most was how Svitolina closed it. After 2 tightly contested sets, she won the final 4 games of the deciding set with a ruthless efficiency that separates very good players from true champions. Entering Berlin, her season record stood at 32 wins and just 8 losses, leading the entire WTA Tour in total victories. This is not a hot streak. This is a sustained, season-long display of controlled, methodical tennis from a player who turned 31 last September and appears to be operating with renewed clarity and confidence. In Berlin, she has barely been pressed. Her first-round opponent retired injured after Svitolina had already dominated the opening set 6-1. In the round of 16, she dismissed local favorite EALA'S 6-3, 6-2 in just 69 minutes, firing 8 aces and saving 7 of the 8 break points she faced. Even when she showed occasional nerves while attempting to serve out the match, she never truly lost the thread. This version of Svitolina does not hand opponents free points. She absorbs pace, redirects it with precision, and waits patiently for her opponents to blink first. That is precisely what makes this quarterfinal so fascinating and so difficult for Alex. Against Rybakina, Alex's greatest strength was composure while her opponent's error count climbed. She stayed disciplined, trusted her instincts, and seized every opening that appeared. But that formula may not transfer against Svitolina, who presents almost the exact opposite challenge. Rybakina's 41 errors created a steady stream of opportunities. Svitolina rarely creates those opportunities at all. Her entire competitive identity, refined over more than a decade at the highest level, is built on consistency, patience, and the refusal to give matches away. Over 500 career singles victories have been constructed on one fundamental principle. She makes her opponents earn every single point. Her heavy topspin ground strokes land consistently deep in the court. Her lateral movement neutralizes most angles. And her return game remains one of the most potent weapons in the sport. Against Alex, whose serve has improved dramatically but is still far from elite by WTA standards, that return game could prove decisive. Several observers noted after the Rybakina match that Alex's body serves, particularly those around 110 km per hour, created real problems for both Rebeka Sramkova and a misfiring Rybakina. But Svitolina is a very different proposition. She has spent her entire career handling bigger deliveries than Alex currently produces. She will step inside the baseline, take the ball early, and immediately turn service points into neutral or even unfavorable situations for Alex. So if Alex cannot count on Svitolina making errors and cannot rely purely on her serve for easy points, where does the path to an upset lie? The first answer is her pace off the ground. Alex's forehand and backhand are remarkably flat for a player of her size, and on grass, that trajectory becomes genuinely dangerous. Her shots skid through the court, stay low, and rush opponents before they can settle. The difference between facing Svitolina on clay versus grass is significant. On clay, Svitolina's deep topspin shots bounce into comfortable hitting zones, giving her time to reset and build points. On grass, the ball stays low, rallies shorten, and her positioning window narrows considerably. If Alex can drive through both wings with conviction, not simply keeping the ball in play, but striking aggressively, she can disrupt Svitolina's preferred rhythm. Every flat forehand that would sit up invitingly on clay instead stays low on grass, forcing Svitolina to create her own pace rather than feeding off the incoming ball. The second key is Alex's movement and court intelligence, qualities that still do not receive the attention they deserve. Her ability to read patterns, anticipate the next shot, and arrive in position early has quietly become one of her most valuable assets. Against top 10 opponents, she has repeatedly demonstrated an advanced understanding of point construction and court geometry. Against Swiatek in Miami in 2025, against Madison Keys in that same tournament, and against Rybakina the previous evening, there were moments when Alex appeared to know exactly where the point was heading before her opponent had fully committed to the shot. That level of tactical awareness is not instinct alone. It is the product of thousands of hours of deliberate work, including a deep investment in doubles and an increasingly sophisticated grasp of positioning and shot selection. Against Svitolina, whose game is built on patterns, consistency, and intelligent construction rather than raw power, that court awareness could become one of Alex's most valuable weapons. She must recognize when Svitolina is building toward a familiar sequence and interrupt it before it fully develops, through a sudden change of direction, a well-timed drop shot, or an aggressive move forward to the net. And speaking of the net, this may be one area where Alex can genuinely unsettle her opponent. Her doubles background has given her touch, instinct, and reflexes at the net that many singles specialists simply do not possess. On grass, where approach shots stay low and passing lane opportunities vanish quickly, moving forward is not a gamble. It is often the correct tactical decision. If Alex can volley with confidence and consistently threaten Svitolina's passing shots, she forces the Ukrainian into producing something extraordinary under severe time pressure. That is a very different challenge from the controlled baseline exchanges where Svitolina typically feels most at home. There is, however, a powerful counterargument. Svitolina's overall grass court winning percentage, may not leap off the page at first glance, but the raw number obscures a more impressive reality. She reached the Wimbledon semifinals in both 2019 and 2023, defeating elite grass court players along the way. She understands the surface. She understands how to manage pressure. And she has already proven she can perform on the sport's grandest stages. More importantly, her 2026 form appears to transcend surface-specific concerns. When a player has defeated the world numbers 2, 3, and 4 in consecutive rounds at a major tournament, she carries a confidence that does not simply evaporate because the court changes from clay to grass. Svitolina looks completely settled in Berlin, like a player who belongs deep in the draw, who has already survived the season's most demanding tests and emerged stronger for them. There is also a meaningful experience gap between the two players. Svitolina has appeared in 20 WTA finals, collected titles across multiple surfaces, and competed in virtually every major venue women's tennis has to offer. For Alex, this quarterfinal run represents the deepest she has ever gone at a WTA 500 event. It is new territory, a new level of expectation, and another chance to prove that her remarkable rise is no longer a surprise, but the foundation of something much larger. There is a real difference between defeating a struggling opponent and sustaining a high level against someone who never grants you a moment to breathe. Svitolina will test every dimension of Alex's game, her stamina, her concentration, and perhaps most critically, her ability to manage the emotional weight of the biggest victory of her career. That emotional hangover is a very real challenge in professional tennis. After beating the world number 2, the temptation is to keep riding the wave. Adrenaline can carry a player through a set, sometimes even a match, but it becomes far less dependable when an experienced opponent begins picking apart your game point by point and dragging you into long, mentally exhausting exchanges. The physical dimension matters equally. Svitolina, standing around 5 feet 9 inches, has built her career on endurance, movement, and relentless consistency. She is capable of maintaining a high level deep into a deciding set without any visible drop in intensity. Alex, at 5 feet 6 inches, has made tremendous strides in her conditioning over the past year, but she has yet to consistently prove she can match the tour's elite in prolonged physical battles on consecutive days. This quarterfinal will not be settled by momentum or adrenaline alone. It will be decided by who adapts faster, competes harder, and refuses to blink first.